You are listening to the Marc Guzman Podcast Experience. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. This episode and wine tasting is sponsored by Lenny Clark with Prime Lending. Lenny Clark is a loan officer specializing in residential home lending. He communicates with you every step of the way, and his honesty sets him apart from the rest. He's able to think outside of the box due to his experience and is able to tailor a loan program to fit your needs. If you can't qualify just yet, not a problem. He will let you know what you need to do in order to be ready. Lanny is also backed by Prime Lending, which is one of the biggest and fastest growing lending banks in the nation. They have simplified the home lending process down to 5 steps. And FYI, step number 5 is to relax and enjoy your new home. So contact Lenny Clark today at 510-964-0620. You may think that pigs are a source of bacon and pork, but spend some time with Leslie Crawford and you'll quickly learn how wrong that assertion is. Leslie recently wrote and published Sprig The Rescue Pig, an illustrated children's book that she hopes will spread awareness to the mistreatment of pigs while showing how remarkable they truly are. Today, Leslie is here to talk about Sprig's story as well as share her experiences from 20 years as a journalist and author. So Leslie, thanks for coming on to the podcast. You know, before we start, let's go ahead and adjust the mic here for you. So thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm excited to talk about your story, how you ended up writing the book. So let's get into your origin.
Okay.
What do you do before writing this children's book?
How far back do you want to go?
We can go as far back as you want.
Well, let's see. Right before doing the children's book, I actually took a 2-year break from journalism because my husband and I had started a mini golf place in San Francisco called...
A mini golf place?
Yes. It is Urban Putt. It's an indoor miniature golf course, restaurant, and bar in the Mission.
Okay. Do you still have that?
Oh, yeah. It's doing quite well, knock on wood. We're opening another one in Denver. So I had been a journalist, but decided to leave that for a bit to help, the business, and then decided to leave. And this. So
was the indoor miniature golf, was that more your husband's idea?
It came from a house party that we had for about 20 years. One year on Valentine's Day, we thought it would be funny to have a bring your own hole party. So we invited people to bring their own golf holes. Mm-hmm. And it was really silly and funny, and it was really fun because it wasn't like some uncomfortable party where people don't know what to talk about because you're doing something. Mm-hmm. So then we started doing it every year, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when we bought a house... It sounds
like it would be a really fun party.
It was really fun. And when we bought a house, we were doing construction, so we put tubes in the wall, and people could putt from the upstairs to downstairs. And it became a competition, and people would build these enormous installations.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so some were very political, some were a little, saucy, really fun.
Tell about the Guantanamo Bay one.
Yeah, there was Guantanamo Bay where you had to wear a jumpsuit and be handcuffed and putt. There was, let's see, Axis of Evil, where you had to actually pay off these lobbyists, and they would just do a hole-in-one for you. There was JFK, where you could either putt from Daley Plaza or the observatory, but you had to hit Connolly's shoulder and get into JFK's, to kill him. Some really goofy things. And then I would do some big papier-mâché kind of ones where one was called Sweet Tooth, and you putt around all this giant candy, and then it would go through the walls into the kitchen, down into a huge papier-mâché head full of cavities. So,
and all this was inside your house?
In our house, 200 people, take over our house. But then it finally became too much. And we have 2 kids. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It stopped being fun. So, but then we were playing mini golf in Tahoe. It's not like we played mini golf all the time, but we were in Tahoe with our kids. And my husband wasn't that happy with where his career was going, even though he's doing really, really well. And I was like, you know what? Let's change our life. Let's just open a mini golf place. Like, that would be an easy thing to do because we were both editors and journalists. And he actually did it. So he found a place and, yeah. Anyway.
It's very cool.
So that's how that happened.
Do you have a blog or a website where you show people how to set up these type of parties in their own house?
Well, the website that has all of the holes from our house is crawfox.com. C-R-A-W. It's CRAWFOX.com. But that's the homemade kind of holes at the party. And then the business is urbanputt.com, where you can, find out about, just go play mini golf and have a cocktail and chicken and waffle skewers.
It's very cool.
So
it's very cool. Okay, so you then decide to write a children's book.
Well, actually, a person who's become a friend of mine, Claire Ellis, started a publishing company about food and sustainability and wanted to do a series of books for kids on farm animals so that people would really identify with these animals. And she came to me right when I had left Urban Putt and asked if I would write Sprig. So I had never written a kid's book, and I told her that, but I took a stab at it, and we went from there.
So when you were a journalist, what was your specialty?
It changed over the years. It kind of went with where I was in my life. When I started in San Francisco, I was a general interest journalist. And then I worked for the Chronicle and the Examiner, writing a lot of general interest things. When I was getting married, I wrote a lot about weddings. And then when I had kids, I started writing about kids and development. I was an editor at San Francisco Magazine for years, doing a lot of general interest things. I mean, probably like you, I like talking to people and finding out their stories. So, but it was all nonfiction, all journalism. So, yeah.
Okay. Sam? Need to move her mic?
Yeah, just a little towards me a bit.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay, so before we continue, so I just want to give a shout out to Lanny Clark. He's a local loan officer. He's the one who supplies us with the wine here. So cheers.
Cheers.
We're having a Chardonnay
Thank you, Lanny,
here.
at lovely Kendall Jackson. And yeah, it must be 5 o'clock somewhere. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. All right. So the book Sprig.
Yes.
So what's the actual full title of the book?
The book is Sprig The Rescue Pig.
Okay. So now you said it's based on a true story. Is that correct?
Yes. So as David Sedaris, the humorist, often, because he writes true stories, but he calls them kind of real-ish. So the true part is that Sprig is on a open truck bound for the slaughterhouse. But this is a kid's book, and we weren't interested in making it terrifying, so we don't say slaughterhouse. But he's on this truck. He has this feeling that things aren't going well. I tried to get inside of a pig's head the best I could, So with the idea that animals sense things, maybe he's like, this is not good that I'm on this truck. So it has happened in real life where pigs will leap out of the slaughterhouse trucks. That has happened. So I have
So that's a common thing.
I don't know how common it is, but if you look on YouTube, you can see some pigs jumping out of trucks. And in my version, it's the fairy tale version. Everything works out for Sprig.
Now, how did the name Sprig come about?
Actually, Claire came up with that and wanted names that rhyme with the animal. So Sprig the Rescue Pig. We have another book coming out in the fall called Gwen the Rescue Hen. And my family is having a lot of fun coming up with any kind of animal, Vern the rescue worm, but I don't think we'll be doing that book.
Vern the rescue worm.
Yeah.
So give us a quick summary of what the book is about.
Great. So it's about this wonderful pig named Sprig. And the idea is really all pigs, all animals are wonderful. And anybody who has a pet knows that. They can see their personality, their essential being. And
That's so true.
yeah, it's I now have chickens and pigeons and a lizard, and if you stop looking at an animal or a person like the other, like they don't have feelings, or if you really try to understand their essential nature, you see their great qualities. And one thing I tried to do in this book and the other book was focus on what this particular kind of animal's superpower is, because every animal, as human being, has a superpower, and pig superpowers are their sense of smell. So that's what pulls Sprig out of the truck, because he smells something. He really smells a forest and all the things that a pig would want to find in a forest. So he goes towards the forest, and while he's there, he smells something really good, which is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And this little girl and her mother are having a picnic. And this is the funny part, because I have a 12-year-old daughter who actually was drawn into the book. Her name is Molly. But I was telling the plot to Molly and her best friend Eve, and Sprig was going to run into this high-tech kind of loner guy in the woods, Murray, who made friends with the pig. And they're like, "Ooh, that's creepy, having some sketch dude in the woods wandering around. It should be a mom and the daughter." So I changed it to a mom and a daughter. And then they take Sprig home. But these kind of pigs, there are potbelly pigs that you can have as pets. But this is a domestic pig that's raised to be up to 1,000 pounds to make a lot of bacon, right? Mm-hmm. They can't live in somebody's home. They'll dig things up. They're big, and they knock things over. So it becomes quite clear soon that this pig can't live with the little girl Rory and her mom. So the mom, who's quite compassionate, decides to find a sanctuary for the pig. And there do exist sanctuaries for rescue animals. And so Sprig gets to live happily ever after at a animal sanctuary.
So what was the motivation behind you writing this book?
Mm-hmm. Well, the motivation and this is published by Stone Pier Press, the motivation is to ideally have people think about the food they're eating. So while we don't really say, "Oh my gosh, do you realize that your bacon is this animal?" We're not trying to guilt trip people or lecture. Is to somehow maybe make a connection that there really is an animal there. And the motivation is just to think about where our food comes from and be conscious about the choices we make.
Yeah, I think that's a big topic in today's world, is where the food really comes from, right? And then a lot of us are desensitized to the whole fact of there's slaughterhouses, right? And for us, or for most people, it's literally you go to a grocery store, it's all packaged meat. You don't even think about the animal. You just look at it, oh, there's meat.
Right, and especially like bacon. Bacon's like the gateway drug to meat, right? It's so good.
I think it's the number one American produce, right?
Oh, is it?
I think so, yeah.
So the challenge, especially with this book, is the bacon problem, because people love bacon. It tastes really good. Mm-hmm. So, I like bacon. I don't eat it anymore. I'm a vegetarian now, especially because of these books.
And how long have you been vegetarian, though?
Well, I had been a roller coaster vegetarian really since college, because I had learned about environmental issues, how terrible meat production is for the environment, clearing forests. It takes so much energy to produce a cow. But then over the years, I would slide and start eating meat again. My husband loves chicken, so I was like, oh, whatever. But I've been a committed vegetarian for about 3 years. I went to visit my in-laws who have a farm outside of Assisi. They're vegetarians. Another friend of mine in Croatia is a vegetarian. And on that trip, they both they don't eat meat. And then I was writing this book, and I just like, can't do it anymore. But I really am not interested in judging other people if they eat meat. I ate it for a long time. It's a decision everybody makes. And
Yeah, I read an article about you and the book, and I believe there's a small section where they spoke about your children also liking to eat meat.
Yes.
So how does that relationship work?
Again, I feel like they're on their own, I'm not trying to sound all spiritual, but their own journey. And I have a 20-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. They still eat bacon. I just don't buy it or cook it in the house, but we went out for breakfast the other day and they got bacon. So, and if they decide to become vegetarians, I'd be thrilled, but I'm not interested in lecturing them or making them feel bad about their choice. I just tell them, if they're interested, why I am,
Now, you've been a vegetarian, you said, now 3 years straight?
Yes, and I will never actually eat meat again.
So I experimented with a vegetarian followed by a vegan diet. I did vegetarian, I want to say, for 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And then I switched it to vegan for a small period of time. I felt so much better off of meat. Do you feel the same way? Like overall energy, skin, just everything.
Right. I don't know. I think I do. But in terms of how I feel in terms of health, I'm not sure. I never was a huge meat eater, but I think for me, it's just how I feel not taking part in that. I guess I'm just going to say that kind of suffering where, somebody died. But I hesitate saying things like that. I'm not trying to be judgy but it feels better to me.
Well, when you see a lot of that stuff, it's really horrifying to see what, our society puts a lot of these animals through just simply to create a packaged piece of meat.
Yeah, and it is an unfortunate system. It's not the farmer's fault. It's not, it's just become this production where most meat in the world is created really in a factory where the animal's just a product. And again, with Sprig and the other books we're going to be doing, it's about saying the animal's not a product. The animal's an animal. Just know that, So, like my relatives who live in the woods in Italy, the hunters go and shoot a wild boar, and then they take that boar and they clean it and they make it into prosciutto or whatever. And for me, that's like the most honorable way to eat meat, to really own it. And that seems like the best way to do it. Obviously, we can't all be out shooting wild boar.
Yeah, there is a movement, though, of people switching from the traditional buying meat at grocery stores and really making an effort to go out and hunt.
Right.
And then that's the only meat that they eat.
Right.
Whatever they're able to shoot, kill, and then they use every part of the animal. Nothing goes to waste. And there's a bit of a movement increase to basically avoid and stay out of the whole that whole cycle of just slaughtering animals for mass production. Right. There was that Netflix documentary. What was it? What the Health, I think.
Oh, okay.
Where they were talking about all the different troubles within the food industry, and then they showed several pig farms and how they slaughter some of the sick pigs and refeed it to the pigs. It was just horrifying.
It is just horrifying. And pigs are really smart animals. They are definitely as smart as dogs. Pigs can even play video games. They're curious. They're sweet, except for like domestic pigs, which are so enormous. They're great companions. They can also be fierce if they're protecting their young, but and then you see the way they're living in most factory farms. It's terrible. And once you see a few of those films, it's hard to get that out of your head. So this is, Sprig is also an effort to show people what pigs, who they are. So.
Mm-hmm. We had a fitness trainer, Ryan Myers, on the podcast probably almost about a year ago now. And he's now filming his own documentary where he's documenting the transition from eating meat to going vegetarian or vegan, one of those two, then going back to meat. So he wanted to document this entire journey that he was doing because he's a fitness trainer. So he really wanted to showcase in his original idea. He says, look, it's not about, because we were getting to different conversations about quality of meat, right? And how a lot of Americans are suffering from heart disease and all kinds of different things because of eating too much meat.
Right.
And his original argument was, well, no, it's not the fact that we eat too much meat, but we're eating very low quality meat. All the nutrients, everything's just sucked out because of the way they raise the meat, produce the meat, and you really have to go with organic and really well-fed animals.
Yeah, animals that eat what they're supposed to be eating.
Correct.
And
yeah, so that was his original idea behind this documentary, is to really showcase that, right? And showcase that, hey, I'm going to go vegan or vegetarian and still show that basically, I guess, comparing that to when he was eating meat, that there's not really a difference in performance and this, and other things that he was tracking. So I've been watching his journey, and he visited several slaughterhouses.
Wow, he did.
He did. And
that's hard to get into, actually. It's hard to make your way inside of those.
Yeah, he couldn't film anything.
Yeah.
But he was able to get inside a few. And I don't think he really went to, I think, the Midwest or East Coast where they have a lot of these.
Yeah.
So he went to some local ones. But he came back and just seeing his Facebook post, he's like, this is really making me think twice about eating meat, about just seeing how we as a society slaughter these animals.
Right.
And now he's really thinking about just dropping meat entirely, not because of his original idea of you really need good quality meat, but simply because he's seen how these animals are and being slaughtered, and he's like, this is not right.
Yeah. Then you realize you're taking part in that.
Yeah.
There's no way around it, that the choices you make, what you buy, you're taking part of that system. So yeah, I think once you see it, I just saw a preview showing of the movie Eating Animals.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie Portman, the actress, helped produce it.
Okay.
And she's a vegan, and they go to some of these slaughterhouses, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible, and it's terrible for the environment. It's terrible for the people living nearby whose water is being poisoned by all of the waste from the pigs. So yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what was the most difficult challenge for you in writing the children's book?
The most difficult challenge is I've always been a connoisseur of children's books. My kids and I, it's just been a big part of our lives. There are some books I've loved so much that are really magical and just understand kids, don't talk down to them, are funny, and just trying to tap into that and not be cutesy or patronizing. So I think the challenge is to get into the spirit and sort of get into a kid's head in that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just also this is, this has the potential of being kind of a heavy story. So, but also having some humor and fun, and stay with the pig, like stay in the pig's head as much as you can,
Did Sprig go on to some wild adventures?
Yeah, Sprig, gets kind of like Curious George, gets into trouble and is confounded. Like how do you wait all day for his friend Rory, and then almost gets hit by a car, and so yeah. So I would say the biggest challenge. There's also the challenge of Charlotte's Web. There's been some very famous pig books, and Babe. So not not having that sort of hanging over me. How do I do that as well? But this is a very different story about getting to know what these pigs are like.
So being a children's book connoisseur, what's been your favorite one? The one that stood out the most?
The book Matilda by Roald Dahl. He did all of his stories are a little twisted and kind of get into kids' humor, I think. But she has superpowers herself, and his language is great, and his sense of imagination is fantastic. So he did, I believe he did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
He would be my favorite children's book author. So.
Okay. I would imagine it's really tough to get in, like, just writing the children's book, trying to get into what would be a fun adventure for a kid, because most of us, when we grow into adults, we lose the whole sense of being a child, the whole fun factor. We get stuck into the everyday life and work, the hustle, and especially out here, right?
Right, exactly.
So was there a process for you to maybe pull back from being so much an adult and try to figure out what would be a fun story to tell with children? Or did that just come natural for you?
It didn't necessarily come naturally. No, I did have to pull back. And the funny thing is, I think that when I sat there and I was really trying to imagine what it's like to be a pig. And it was also, it kind of got overlapped with feeling what it's like to be a kid. Because, when you're a kid and something's wrong, maybe something's wrong in your family, but you don't have the words for it. And I think that was sort of my first sentence. Like, he knew something was wrong. He just didn't have the words for it. And he certainly didn't have our words. He's a pig. But that feeling when you're little and you kind of know something's not right, but you can't figure it out, and kind of getting into that anxiousness of feeling of powerlessness that kids have, and how they can have agency in their life, and especially if they are trying to escape something that's really difficult in their life. It's so hard if you're 6, or if you're a pig. How are you going to
and they say pigs have the same intelligence level as a 3-year-old?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, there have been different measures of intelligence that they can do, and pigs are high scores. High-scoring animals, like octopus is a really smart animal, oddly.
Yeah. I've seen some amazing videos of octopus figuring out solutions to puzzles.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So then you have to think about eating calamari. It's like, wow, so.
Yeah. It's that's a tough decision. I mean, once you're placed in front of the animal, I think probably 90% of the people would not be able to kill the animal that they're actually eating.
Right.
Right.
I
mean, we've really become really desensitized to a lot of that, to a lot of the food that we're eating.
Absolutely. We're really removed on many levels to what we eat. I started a farmer's market in San Francisco with a couple friends, and that's also helped. Just understanding the seasons and what you're eating, how it gets to you. I think it places more value for you on what you're eating and how special it is to get a pomegranate in September, and the effort that went into it.
Yeah, and not just meat, but you have vegetables, fruits, and different things. Any food that's produced on a mass scale, you're going to be dealing with preservatives, you're going to be dealing with chemicals, you're going to be dealing with who knows what else that they have to use to preserve this food, to ship it globally in some cases. Right. And so, I mean, just think about, you may be consuming a very small amount of a chemical that won't do you any harm now, or in a month from now, or in a year from now. But when you're consuming that on a consistent basis for many, many years, it just makes you wonder all the potential future side effects that chemical can produce, right?
Absolutely.
Because some things just build up in your body can't really break it down, right. And it just builds up over time. I mean, look at mercury, right? In fish. That's similar.
That's scary.
Yeah, it just builds up. Your body can't really break it down and get rid of it. So yeah, I mean, going to farmers market is a big deal because you're buying from local producers.
Right. You know where it comes from. And, you know, you asked me if I felt different when I ate meat and not. What I've noticed more is when I eat real junk food, now that I eat more just whole foods, that's when I really notice it. It makes me feel kind of afterwards. Like if you feel kind of bad after eating something, that might be a sign that food really isn't doing you any favors, you know. If you go eat, you know, sometimes it's really great to eat French fries, but you usually don't feel good after you eat them.
Yeah.
You know, the same
You
way.
feel real good during it.
yeah, you feel great, and then you're like, oh God, you know, and that's a pretty good signal. Like, maybe not so good for you, you know.
Yeah.
Eating the super hot Cheetos or something. Not that I eat them that much, but sometimes I'll eat my kids' leftovers. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it all also comes down to moderation, right? Like if you're gonna eat some really bad food, moderation is fine.
Yeah. Have fun once in a while, but yeah, I don't know. The older I get, I also don't want to be some, I don't know, stern, sort of preachy. Don't do this and don't do that. It just does. For me, it just doesn't work in life to be some, I don't know, killjoy. And people don't like being lectured to. So
yeah. But putting out a children's book is a great way to kind of put the message out there.
Thank you. Well, I hope so. Yeah.
And you have another book coming out.
Yes, the next
Gwen the Rescue Hen, right?
Gwen the Rescue Hen.
Now,
yes.
Being that your husband loves chicken, was this book meant for him?
Yeah. No, but he's, feeling, you know, I think there's a little guilt there. And now we have chickens. We have 6 chickens.
Okay.
So, and once you name them too, it's, but he loves chickens so much, I think he's able to think of, there's our chickens and then, you know, chickens he eats. But,
is there a lot of work in having pet chickens?
You know, chickens are great. I love them. No, I don't find a lot of work. And it also has been really nice because it gets me sort of, if nothing else, outside twice a day because I have to let them out, give them some food, and then at the end of the day, get them back in so they're not eaten by a raccoon. And no, they're pretty easy animals. They're great. And I have one especially great chicken. Actually, it's in this photo here. Her name is Alice Betoklis, but she's like this crazy chicken. She acts like a dog. She follows me into the house. One day she went and laid an egg on my daughter's bed, which was really smart. It was like, here's a little present. But she doesn't act like the other chickens at all. So it's really fun getting to know them on that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this new book, Gwen the Rescue Hen, what's that story going to be about?
Okay. So that also was based in reality in that a tornado tore apart a factory farm because I was trying to figure out how am I going to get a chicken out of a factory farm because it's really locked down. And
that's also brutal to see if you see those videos, just thousands and thousands of chickens and hens just...
It's just terrible. They cut their beaks so they don't peck at each other because they're in these terrible conditions. I mean, it's horrible. And even like sometimes people, you know, will buy free, quote unquote, free range chickens, but they're free range in this horrible condition, usually not getting outside much. It's pretty brutal. So,
yeah, I saw a video of a free range growing facility, and you literally had 100 chickens stuck together because they had no place to move.
Right.
Yes, they're not caged, but that's, I guess, technically free range, right?
Exactly. That they're not in a battery cage, but they're, and you know, not to be a downer for your audience, but if you walk through one of those, there'll be dead chickens everywhere, and the amount of disease, and it's really terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should look at those videos and just kind of, I mean, if anything, it gives you a reminder to, like, I think twice about where you're buying the food from.
Right, and it is possible. It will cost more money, but if you want to buy, again, bacon or eggs, but from a sustainable kind of farm, that at least the animal had a better life, and you're kind of giving them that by paying more. You're saying, okay, I really want I really want eggs. I really want bacon. I want ham, whatever. But I'm going to pay a little bit more, maybe eat a little bit less, and make sure that the animal had some kind of a good life while she or he was alive. And that's, I don't know, that's good karma.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, there's a movement for with a group of people that are hunting the meat that they kill.
Right.
Or,
exactly.
I mean, well, eating the meat that they hunt and kill, right? And then I think that's also developed into another movement of people buying meat from sustainable
Exactly.
farms.
Right.
That's
exactly. They'll go
is that
in
the
together
correct term?
and,
Sustainable.
and buy a pig. Or,
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard of Novella Carpenter. She lives in the East Bay, and she wrote a great book, and now I'm going to forget the title, where she raised a pig in Oakland, like on kind of squatting land, I think.
Oh, I think I heard about
and then
that.
she
Yeah.
decided, she was really like, I'm going to kill it myself. I want to, you know, see what this is like. It was it was great, and I thought it was so admirable because she owned it from beginning to end, you know. So
Yeah.
but and you were asking about Gwen.
So
The way she gets out is it's a little Wizard of Oz because a tornado comes and tears apart the factory, and this has happened where a whole, you know, factory farm is torn apart, which seems very likely in the Midland, you know. And then the fairy tale part is her cage lands on top of a chicken diner, which kind of cracked me up because it felt a little subversive. So, and then I don't know if you've ever seen the Doggy Diner head in San Francisco.
No.
It's this huge, it's this old, kind of old 50s diner, but they've kept the head. It's this big dog head. So I had that in my mind when I wrote it, and it's this big chicken head on top of the diner, like enormous. And it freaks Gwen out. She's kind of like, oh my God, look, that's the biggest chicken I've ever seen. And then the wind blows, and she finally gets out of her cage and has her adventure and meets a little boy named Mateo, and he takes her under his wing, so to speak, and she gets a happily ever after story as well, and gets to be a chicken. And she had never really gotten to be a chicken. That's the other thing, where these animals, where they live, they don't get to even find out who they are. They're just prisoners their whole life, living no kind of life. So she gets to find out what chickens like to do, which is take dust baths and preen and lay eggs. Obviously, that's one thing she had been created for in the factory farm. But so she gets to realize how great it is to be a chicken. And her superpower is her eyesight. So chickens have amazing eyesight. They can see things we can't even imagine. Yeah, it's probably like being on acid all the time. You probably see, like, you know, all these colors, and, you know, but they can see the range of colors they can see is stunning. They have an extra cone in their eye.
Okay.
And they can also see sort of on the side. So when you see birds like looking that way, they can just, you know, they can see so much more than we can see. And then you also realize how limited we are compared to some animals, whether it's, you know, compared to a pig who can smell things we can't even, you know, imagine.
Yeah, I think as humans we've obviously come a long way, but we've kind of separated ourselves from, or detached ourselves, and we're humans, they're animals.
Right, exactly. They're the other.
Yeah, they're the other animals. We always forget that we're animals, and we always think we're superior because we've built societies, we built civilizations, and yeah, there's something to be said for that, but many of us have really just detached ourselves. We don't see ourselves as animals.
My daughter's always reminding me of that. We are animals as well. And, you know, we've been given certain gifts, but they're different than these other animals. So, I mean, you know, the cool thing like about Spider-Man is somebody had the idea, oh, what if a person had the qualities of a spider, though, you know, could do webs. I guess it's not a very, like, sexy superhero story like Pigman or Chicken Woman or something. But, you know, if you did it, she could see everything. And,
yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, someone said, as advanced as we are today, we're still just fancy monkeys on a big rock flying in the middle of space.
Oh my gosh. That's funny and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
I know. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
in terms
Yet
of
we think
development.
we're so special. And yeah, we are, but we have to remember that there's a lot of other species living on this planet other than, what's the next smartest animal? Is it dolphin from a human?
Dolphins are up there, yeah.
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 Octopuses are up there.
And actually pigs are up there.
And elephants too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, right. And
And there's that article that I saw on Twitter the other day of some guy who, for sport, just hunts elephants. And he's killed 300 in his lifetime.
I don't
And
know
he
how
uses
that's okay.
he uses some kind of loophole where he goes to hunt where he's able to use his loophole, and then he's able to actually go out and hunt elephants. And he's killed 300 to date.
Why? And why is that legal? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that was depressing.
I guess, yeah. So let's change the subject here. So what's marketing like for a children's book? Do you do many pop-ups where you're reading to children?
Yes, and actually we have found, I mean, I've done a lot of bookstore readings. I read at Mrs. Dalloway's in Berkeley and some different bookstores in San Francisco. The audience that we seem to be getting a lot of attention from are vegan and vegetarian parents, because there aren't that many books that speak about this, or maybe they do, but it might be a little scary. It might be too much truth for a very young kid. You want to not terrify them about factory farming, which we really have consciously not done in our books. So we're getting a lot of attention from that crowd, and I've gone to a couple different vegan fairs or veggie fairs, festivals, and that's been really fun.
Okay. What other marketing? Because if there's someone that's looking to write a book, and it's going to be their first book. Well, actually, is this your first book that you've written? I know you were a journalist before, but
right. Well, I've done, but sort of more novelty books. I did something it was actually a pack of cards. It was 50 walks in the city with kids with Chronicle books. I paid my son, who was 8 at the time, to go on walks with me. So, because I knew after the third walk he wouldn't do it if he didn't get anything out of it. So I paid him. And I did a little book on babies and baths, as if you need a book on that. But so this is the first real book I've done in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Online marketing,
right?
Or does your publisher take care of a lot of the marketing for you?
A lot of it. We work closely together. You do. These days you just have to be out in social media and everything. Twitter and just keep getting the word out, trying to let people know what's going on. So a lot of marketing, and there's so much out there right now. So
yeah, I bet it's competitive out there, right?
It is. So I appreciate this interview.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So besides the pig, chicken,
yes,
do you have any other plans to focus on a children's book of a different animal?
Yes, McDowell the rescue cow. He's the next one. Yes. So that will be the third one, because the whole hamburger issue.
Mm-hmm.
But and cows are quite charming as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you see yourself going forward continuing to write children's book, or do you feel at some point you may want to go back to the journalism you used to do?
Well, I'm hoping to do all of it. I'm still writing articles. I'm still doing journalism. I'm actually working on a novel right now. So
you're staying busy.
So yeah, I'm staying busy, and then helping. I do a farmer's market, and I run events at this town square in my neighborhood. So trying to do as much as I can. I never like being idle. So
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's very cool. Now, where can people buy your book?
They can buy it definitely on Amazon. And if they do, I always like to give a plug to please write a review. That really helps, actually. And Barnes & Noble online.
And then do you have a website?
I have a website, lesliecrawford.net, although you can't immediately buy it on my website. You can buy it on stonepeerpress.org. That is the publisher of the book. And you can also ask your local bookstore to carry it if they don't.
Very cool. So a tip for someone that may be writing and runs into writer's block.
Right.
You know, that's
right.
So I used to do blogging years ago.
Right.
And then I ended up switching to doing some more video and now podcasting because it's a lot easier. Yeah. When I sit down and try to write different blog articles, writer's block is a very common thing.
Absolutely.
So do you have a tip for to overcome writer's block?
Well, let's see. I've been a journalist at least for 25 years, and I would say I suffered from writer's block enormously for years, and I would sit and just start over and over and over.
So it's a very common thing amongst writers then?
Absolutely, because writers tend to be neurotic and insecure anyway, so they're sitting there alone at 1 a.m. trying to make something perfect. I overcame it by not trying to be perfect, and it's the funny thing about I think being good at anything, like when I was skiing, it was the same thing. If you're trying too hard, it actually gets in the way. You need to have that great balance of letting go and doing your best. So my favorite kind of writing actually has some humor in it, and if you're trying too hard, you're not going to be funny. You're not going to be loose. So I don't know. It almost was about 5 years ago or something where I finally somehow broke through, and I was like, just write. And you can even just write for yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be great. You can go back to it and redo it. But I think it's that quote about perfection is the enemy of creativity or something. I'm probably mangling the quote, but that gets in the way of just going for it. The way you just need to go for things in life and enjoy it. If I'm enjoying it, usually somebody will enjoy reading it. But if I'm just like, torturing myself, I think it will read that way. So try to.
Do you find yourself like maybe in various moments just writing short snippets of ideas and then going back and maybe rewriting those or combining them together? And
Definitely. And I think that's a good point too, is like be open to those snippets. The more you just sort of relax and open yourself up to being almost a conduit to what might come to you, and kind of respecting those little things that come to you and say, wow, that actually might be a good idea, and go for it. I mean, because we all get a lot of good ideas, and then we either run with them or not. My husband Steve, when we were like mini golf, people came to us later once we had opened it and said, oh, I thought of doing a mini golf place. God, I missed it. You guys did it. And it's just, when is that moment you go, I'm just going to take this idea and really try and do it. It might sound crazy. I mean, I'm sure with your podcast, you thought, it might be fun to do a podcast along with my real estate business. And then there was whatever moment you're like, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to invest in it. And then you're like, okay, I went with it and it works.
Yeah, and it's a very nerve-wracking idea to have when it's something out of your comfort zone too.
Absolutely. And you might have enough people in your life going, why are you doing that? You have a good business. Why are you, like, stay in your lane,
Yeah.
But this is it. This is your only life to go for it.
So. Yeah, last week we had an entrepreneur on the podcast. In fact, his episode is going to air tomorrow. And we were talking about how everyone has great ideas, but what really matters is if you can actually execute on those ideas and make it happen.
Absolutely.
And so many people have great ideas. They just never, that fear of whatever, the fear of judgment from others, the fear of failure, the fear of whatever holds them back.
Right, exactly. And so
I guess writing is very similar in that you're writing, you're creating in art. It's your passion. It's something you love to do. But then there's fear of probably, what if people read this and it's not good?
Right, exactly. So I think in terms of writer's block, I think it probably is about fear. So, and it might be really bad what you're writing, but you can go back to it. You know, Anne Lamott is, who lives in Marin, but she always writes about the shitty first draft. So write the shitty first draft and then go back to it and make it better. But probably whatever got you to the page to write something, you have some important idea that has some value, and you can go back and make it wittier or more polished. But I don't know, don't be afraid of your own bad self. Just, keep going.
Yeah. Well, Leslie, thanks for being on the podcast. We're going to go ahead and link up the link for people if they're interested in purchasing your book.
Thank you.
Good luck to the future books.
Thank you very much.
Wish you the best.
Okay. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.